We drove to Harvard Divinity School, and Srila Prabhupada gave a brilliant lecture. But, you know, Harvard University, being reputed as the best in the nation, I mean, the students were quite proud of themselves. So at the end of the lecture, when Srila Prabhupada said, "Any questions?" like, so many hands shot up. So one young man began to say, you know, what is the utility of Krishna consciousness? And he started speaking about the Russian Revolution, you know, that the Russian Revolution actually did some good for the people, but what good will Krishna consciousness do? And of course Srila Prabhupada answered, and he said, well, okay, since the Russian Revolution, are the people in Russia happy? And the boy said, no. And Srila Prabhupada said, then what is the use? And even if things get better for some time, again after some time they will get worse. So what is the use? And he explained the benefit of Krishna consciousness. Then another young man asked, you know, you say we should chant Hare Krishna, repeat Hare Krishna, but couldn't we get the same effect just by repeating numbers, just counting numbers? So Srila Prabhupada replied, yes, you can try counting, and after you're tired of counting, you can try chanting. And everyone laughed. Then someone asked, have you seen God? And Srila Prabhupada said, if I tell you falsely that I've seen God, will you believe me? So at first the boy didn't know what he just heard. And Srila Prabhupada repeated, if I tell you falsely that I have seen God, will you believe me? And the boy said, no. Srila Prabhupada said, then what is the use of the question? So like one after the other, he was completely defeating all the opponents. And so quickly, you know, without any hesitation, that the students were stunned. I mean, the whole room became hushed. And they realized they were in the presence of a superior personality.
There was a lecture going on. Prabhupada spoke on the 4 classes of men, the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. And this was in front of a university crowd, a rowdy crowd of students, particularly in Sweden, where nothing is holy and nothing is sacred. And so as soon as Prabhupada finished, the students stood up right in front and said, of course you think you're a first-class man. Prabhupada lectured first class, second class, third class man, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya. You're thinking you're a first-class man sitting in a sea of followers covered with flowers, sitting on a high exalted seat. You think you're first class. And I was boiling, just about to pounce on the Prabhupada. If he would have made just a little sign, I would have just ripped this man into shreds. Well, anyway, coming from Germany, we are very expert to deal with these matters. So, in any way, I was just ready. My blood was boiling. But it was dead silent in the room. Nobody spoke a word. You know, you could hear a pin falling on the ground. And then Prabhupada said, he was pleading with the man, practically speaking. He said, no, no, no. He said, like this with his hands. He said, no, no, no. I'm not a first-class man. He said, I'm a fifth-class man. And so everybody was shocked. It was dead silent for a little while. And then Prabhupada said, in this deafening silence, he said, because I'm the servant of everyone. And we were just astounded when he said this. And I saw behind us, his lip was quivering, you know. He was deeply, when he spoke it, he knew it was true, that he was a servant of the whole world. And so two big tears came behind his spectacles. And that I saw, because I was right there. How he cried when he said this. And it was so clear that he was really the servant of the whole world, that he didn't think much of himself, like we have heard before, that he was so humble, that he had so much Shakti on one side, and on the other side, that he was so humble that he considered himself, in fact, fifth class, the servant of everyone, the person who was supporting everybody, serving everybody, giving to everybody, and not expecting anything in return. I thought it was such a sublime display of such a pure devotee of Krishna. It was very moving, and I will never be able to forget it.
When we were in Prabhupada's room there in Chicago in '74, and this is on the video, but it was a very sweet conversation. And first, Prabhupada thought that my husband was my father's son. And then my father said, no, this is my daughter. I said, oh. He said, do you have any sons? And my father said, no, just daughters, 3 daughters. I said, oh, only daughters. And then Prabhupada told my father the story of Prahlad and Hiranyakashipu. Basically, he was telling my father that he was a demon. But my father really appreciated it. He really enjoyed hearing the story. And my father said, I have my own religion. Is it all right if I visit a temple if I have my own religion? Some places of worship, they only want you to come if you really want to participate. Of course, later my father almost became a devotee, but at this point, this was his first time that he met Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, yes. So just like we're in Chicago, and he was very casual that. He was like this on a cushion. He said, yes, just like there's so many planes going to Chicago, but they have to know that they're going to Chicago, or else what is the meaning of many planes? He said, so if you know that the purpose of religion is to know God and to love Him, then you can say that there's so many religions. I thought about that for many, many months. How that most religions don't say that their goal is to know God and to love Him. They want to go to heaven, or they want salvation. And then my father asked Prabhupada, he said, well, I'm really coming here just to see my daughter and my son-in-law. Is that okay? You know, same kind of question, that I'm not really coming to see Krishna. And Prabhupada said, yes. Again, he was like this. He said, yes. He said, they are loving Krishna. And I'm thinking, I don't love Krishna. He said, chanting and dancing are symptoms of loving Krishna. So they are loving Krishna, and you are loving them, and two things equal to the same thing are equal to each other. That was very sweet. That's one of the things that Prabhupada said that's really sustained me over the years. I thought Prabhupada saw at least the potential that I'm loving Krishna. So if Prabhupada said I'm loving Krishna, someday I'll love Krishna. And it also really guided me in my relationships with my family, especially at the last days of my mother's life, when I was thinking, if I can just get my mother attached to me, and then gradually move that into an attachment to Krishna. And my father also asked at that time, he said, why are you so anxious to give everyone your food, even if they don't know anything about your philosophy? And Prabhupada said, do you believe in infection? And my father said, yes. And Prabhupada said, just like if you eat the food of a sick person, you'll be infected with their disease. And in the same way, if you eat the food that Krishna's eaten, you'll be infected with Krishna's disease. So that was really wonderful. And when we walked out of the room, my father looked at me. He said, now I understand why you've joined this movement. This is a genuine holy man. So that was very nice.
Prabhupada did 2 public programs, as far as I remember. On one program, my father confronted him. He was angry at Prabhupada for having stolen his sons. he said, I cannot believe that it is responsible to bring a foreign culture into, that is the Indian culture, into Germany. It will not survive. The people who are now with you will not be able to stay. It's almost like taking a crocodile from Egypt and transplanting it in the cold River Rhine. How will the crocodile survive there? It's irresponsible. Prabhupada took up the challenge. He looked at my father. He must have understood it's the father of one of his disciples. And he said, you can become Krishna conscious in suit and tie. My father understood. He understood Krishna consciousness is not a matter of culture. The dress may change according to culture. But no, you didn't have to dress in an Indian way. You didn't have to accept the externals to become Krishna conscious. And to this day, he remembers this. At the first moment, he was thinking, oh, this is too simple of an answer for my very intellectual challenge. But the words of the pure devotee do not necessarily act on the intellectual or mental platform on which the question was posed. They have a Shakti, a transformative Shakti, which works much deeper. And my father thought, what a pleasant encounter. The Germans are used to tough discussions, and he was very much, yes, he thought, my son is in good hands. This is a very sensible personality. And I was very, very grateful to Srila Prabhupada for having solved a difficult family issue.
When we first arrived in Mayapur, it was the days of the brick hut with the thatched roof and the water pump and the mud everywhere. And we arrived like that. And Srila Prabhupada was staying in the brick hut, and Shamsundar was the secretary, and myself, I was the cook. And I have to speak a little bit about the situation to sort of let you understand, you know, the mood that was there for me, which was I always wanted to be as cook like this. And so Krishna had rewarded me. Govinda Das and Gaur Sundar, they were my early ideals, you know, like the family that was engaged in the service of the Guru. So now here it was, and somehow my husband and myself were engaged in the service of the Guru. And this time in Mayapur, I was faced with not only service of Guru, but service of husband, service of daughter, and trying to maintain my sanity in a situation that was materially impossible. There was no facilities. I was living in a tent. I had 2 buckets to cook with, and the servant would come every day and grab one of the buckets right before the meal was ended to heat the water for Prabhupada's bath. Like, we never thought, you know, I didn't even think, well, why don't you go get yourself a bucket, you know? Prabhupada's servant wanted the bucket. Oh, yes. But then I was like left holding the one bucket, really needing, you know, for chapatis, and also it was like, that was one aspect. But the real thing was, I'd start out the day having to confront the treasurer. Now, the duty of a treasurer is not to give money out, it's to hold on to every paisa, no matter what, or no matter who. So I would usually have a rather royal argument with the treasurer concerning funds for Srila Prabhupada's Bhoga. Then I'd collect my daughter and go out and have an argument with the rickshawwala who was going to take me to the boat, where I had another argument concerning the money, because you see, being white, they expected at least 10 times the amount, but the treasurer was only going to give us what the locals paid, no matter what. And he wouldn't pay for my daughter, and they wanted my daughter to pay no matter what. And this caused a bitter argument every single day. So then I finished that fight. On the other, it used to be when you get off the boat at the other side, there was a guy that you'd have to pay a tax in order to walk up the bank. So there was another argument. Then another fight with the rickshaw wallas who were going to take you to the Sabji market and to fight with everybody there who you had to deal with, and then do it all over again to go back to get to the other side. So by the time I get back there, I would just be, and trying to, hold on to my kid and, keep her happy, and then start cooking. And then have the servant come and take away the stove just before lunch so that, to double my anxiety, which was already at peak level. So I started thinking, actually, what am I doing, And on top of that, every day I'm thinking, how can I please Srila Prabhupada? And I was really thinking like this. I really wanted to cook perfectly for him. So I'd always be thinking about it all day. I mean, even when I wasn't cooking, after I'd cooked, I'd be thinking already for the next day, how can I do it perfectly? And then it seemed like every single day he was telling me something that I was doing imperfectly. So I can remember that one day there was too much salt we'd always put salt, pepper, and nimbu. So one day there was too much salt, so then the next day I took less, but then there was too little. And I was thinking, I can't get it right. I can't do it right. Everything I do is wrong. Actually, maybe I shouldn't even be cooking. And the minute that idea went in my mind, I started feeling, yeah, actually, someone else should be cooking. And I was thinking, yeah, I'll just go tell Prabhupada to get someone else, or I'll get someone else who can be better than me at it. And I started actually feeling better. I was thinking, the problem's almost solved. All I have to do is tell Prabhupada, and that's it. So the next day I go in there, full of this idea. And the thing was, I'd heard his godbrothers were coming for lunch. And that was another thing. Prabhupada was getting criticized for having a female cook. I was a cook, and therefore I felt, badly about that too. I mean, there was other criticisms. That was just one of them. So I'm going to, I find out his godbrothers are coming for lunch. So I think, well, he certainly won't have me cook today, so I'll tell him tomorrow. But he calls me in the room, and he starts to tell me what he wants for lunch. So I couldn't very well say, well, Srila Prabhupada, not today, because, everything's in motion. So, okay, I go out and I make the lunch. And I come to bring it in, and I look, he's in the front part of the room, and I'm looking in, and there he is at the end like a royal king, and on each side are a row of old stately Vaishnavas with dandas, and it was an impressive sight. But I felt completely intimidated. So what I did, because I had to go in there, is I took my sari and I put it over my head like this. And then I covered my hands, and I got down on the floor, my hands and knees, and I had the plate. So the only thing was the plate, and I crawled in with just the plate. And I put it down, and then I was making my obeisances, and I started slithering back out. And I heard Srila Prabhupada say, yes, she cooks for me, and all I do is criticize her. But she would slit her throat for me, and I would do the same for her. And when he said that, I completely disintegrated. By the time I got to the other door, I was still covered up with my sari. I was just completely wet with tears, because I realized at that point how mundane my whole consciousness had been, and how my whole dealings with this whole issue had been based upon, a misunderstanding of the relationship between the guru and the disciple. And in fact, every day I was thinking, I want to do it perfect. How can I do it perfect? What do you want? And he was telling me. He wasn't criticizing me. I was just taking it in that very mundane manner. But because I wanted to know how it could be more pleasing to him, he told me that I was in such an illusion as to the position of a disciple and what the relationship was, of servitude meant you pat me on my back, that, my misconception. And when I heard that, I realized actually it was true. There was no doubt about it. It was absolutely true. My mood was like that, and I would have done anything. But it had never occurred to me, actually, how Prabhupada would do anything for us. And then I realized he already was doing everything for us. And so my insignificance at that point was, immense. But my gratitude and my love for him was certainly, or the potential for that love was certainly revealed at that point.